people liking already. So that's always a good sign. Paul, thank you, mate. Yes, I am live now. Clearly, technology is not my strong suit, even though I talk about it way too much. But appreciate it. So we'll give everyone a couple of minutes just to jump in and get comfy, get a cup of tea, get themselves sorted.
It's lunchtime, so maybe grab a bite.
Grab a bite to eat, listen to us waffle on, and see what they say. Talia, yeah, you're live. Thanks, Talia. Always good to have that, just back up that people know that we're live now. Cool. So if you're all set, why don't we jump straight in? Cool. Right. Well, thank you everyone who's here live, and to anyone else that's joining, you can catch up as we go along. We're joined today by Ellie, and I just wanted to thank everyone for jumping on, who taking time to that wants to kind of learn about what's going on in the future of hiring within AI. That's what we're here to talk about today. See what's really going on in our world, because it is important to keep up to date with it and to, I guess, see what trends are happening, what's going on, and what we can do to keep one step ahead. As I always say to people, there are no experts in talent acquisition or recruitment. There are well-versed people, and to stay well-versed, we need to ensure we're doing things like this, speaking to industry experts, speaking to people who live and breathe it. Now, speaking of people who live and breathe it, I'm here today joined by Ellie. Ellie, if you'd like to introduce yourself to the people that are watching.
Yeah, absolutely. Hello to everyone, and thank you so much, Sean, for bringing me along. So I'm Ellie. I'm the head of customer success at Canditech. I have been with Canditech for coming up for 3.5 years. I've been working in HR tech for about 7 years, and also have a background in recruitment as well. So it's been a very much an interesting time with the new age of AI, lots of change. For those of you who don't know Canditech, we are an all-in-one skills assessment platform. Essentially, we help our clients to see how candidates do the job before they get the job. My day-to-day really looks like helping partners find efficiencies, make for more fairer, consistent hiring processes. So, of course, AI is always the top of everyone's to-do list. They want to know how they implement it. So, yeah, really, really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, mate, thank you so much for joining me as well. I really appreciate it. And you're absolutely spot on. The one thing people are talking about most of this year and last year, and well, let's say, be honest, the last couple of years really, where we've seen the biggest growth of AI within recruitment, is this topic, how people are going to be using it, where people are going to be using it. I just saw a post from the folks at Rec Hub saying that 78% of people within talent acquisition now are adopting the use of AI within their processes, which is absolutely nuts. Considering last year, some people were afraid to even look at it. They were worried what compliance were going to think. And just it's so good to see that people are actually diving into it now and preparing with it. Because always think that, why wouldn't you want to try and make your life easier by using the right tools and helping guide your own process? So that's one of the things I think we start looking at the start of the year. We're well into the year now. We're in February. Thank God January's dead and gone. And one thing people are going to be looking at is hiring process and how they can improve them. And you are someone who speaks to hundreds and thousands of recruitment folks, talent acquisition people who are redefining their processes and looking at ways to improve things. So from your perspective, who's seen all those things, to jump straight in, what does a good hiring process look like for the rest of the year?
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly what you said. I think the AI has definitely been embraced, and where people were very hesitant at the start. What's it going to do? How can we use it? How can we make sure we're doing it in a good way? People are really looking, okay, how can we build processes that really maximize AI? And so that can start from, I really think it's a big shift towards evidence-based hiring, less on vibes, less on the pedigree of a candidate, and more on the potential. What can this candidate actually bring to the company today? It's less about where you can work and more can you actually do the job? So I think today and moving forward, we're seeing less filtering based on CVs, on titles, and years of experience. And it's really about how they can actually do the job. How can they solve the problems that we have? How can they think of real world challenges? How can they, plan and implement things for the forward? So, AI, as much as it's created a lot of efficiency, it's also created a lot of noise. We have candidates writing CVs with AI that were made with job descriptions made with AI, going to AI CV parsers. And so I think AI, when used to evidence and pull out the evidence of candidates' capabilities, it's an amazing tool. And there's also new skills, right? It's not just about, can you write code or can you work with Excel? It's can you prompt AI to help you, move into territory or an area that you're not familiar with? Can we use AI to really expand, not just optimize the work today, but expand pretty much into infinity? That sounds cliche, but that is really the way that it's looking.
No, I totally understand. And one of the things I think is what you mentioned there about like people are seeing the data in it now. Do you think there's such a strong evidence to why people should be using it, because we've built up that like those use cases over the past like year and a half to see like, okay, this is what it does. This is how much time it saved me. These are the hiring signals it gives me when it comes to like, using certain products. Do you feel like that's now like concrete with people now, as opposed to like people umming and ahhing about adopting it like a couple of years ago?
Yeah, so absolutely. I think like all companies are at different stages. We have a lot of AI first companies. They're looking to build like teams of AI experts, and that is like AI focused. If there's no AI in the product, we don't want to talk about it. People are having budgets specifically to implement AI first products. I think there's what needs more understanding, and what people are really starting to think about is what can we use AI for? The AI is never there to replace the human. The AI is there to really cut the noise and clear the noise when it comes to repetitive tasks, things like manual screening, scheduling interviews, pre-screening candidates. Like, where can we use AI to help to reduce the time that humans need to spend on these repetitive tasks that are really well suited for AI, in order to free up the time for hiring managers, for recruiters that need to have that, personal touch to add the human value where that value is needed. So it's never about just changing everything and having AI do everything. It's about using AI in a smart way to build efficiency, to build systems that allow us to maximize our time with the people that have the highest potentials to succeed in the role.
Yeah, absolutely agree. A good friend of mine, Dominic Joyce, says, automate the mundane so you can lean into the human element. And I think that's what it is. You didn't see people complaining a few years ago when the car was made, saying, I'm not going to use that car to improve my journey time. I'm going to still focus on the horse and take 10 days to walk somewhere. Like,
right.
These are tools that are going to help. Like, it's the same with accountants. When Excel came out, accountants didn't run for the hill. They adopted, they used it, and it improved their processes on how they were kind of working. And I guess speaking of like processing, that kind of improving things like we just said there, what do you think, I guess, an area recruiters are still massively over-indexing on that, I guess, that won't matter in a couple of years?
So I think we're going to see a less index of placing the importance of the CV and the resume, right? This has always been like classically the start of everyone's recruitment journey. It's where people have, the things that they've done. It's more like historic context. But I think we're going to see, for example, a less indexing on like years of experience. The problem is today we really see it as a linear thing. Okay, well, if someone has 3 years experience and someone has 5 years experience, so the person with 5 years experience, linearly they should be better. But we actually know that that's not true at all. There's a huge amount of factors that depend. 3 years in a company, well, what stage was the company, what was the company doing, etc. And so it really is about taking the focus and putting it more on, okay, well, how does this person have the capabilities that we need within this team, with the way that the team is structured now, with the goals that we want to achieve? It's about quality over quantity. It's about problem solving, unfamiliar challenges, leading people, working with AI, prompting AI, being able to use AI responsibly. The work environment is changing a lot, and I think that it's all about hiring, also for potential for the future, rather than X amount of years means that this person is better or less, better for any given role.
Absolutely. I think it removes that bias, right? It removes, some people really do hire off sometimes gut feel, or there is a bit of bias in that. Oh, I interviewed that person. Oh, they support Chelsea. Oh, I support Chelsea. Oh, okay, I'm going to hire this person. All that kind of stuff. So it definitely gets rid of that. I do think should be a human element of gut feel in certain instinct. Shouldn't be removed, but shouldn't make up like the entire hiring decision, which I think this kind of alleviates that bias and problem, right?
Sure.
And I guess speaking of problems, and this is probably a hot topic or a spicier question, because obviously you work in RegTech, right? You work in that space, you work in that element. So I do want to pick your brains on this in particular, is that there's a lot of promises made around like what RegTech can do at the moment, what these kind of areas or what kind of areas we can lean into, what it can achieve for us, the hours it can reduce in mundane admin work. But what's the one RegTech promise that sounds great on LinkedIn, but I guess hasn't really delivered yet?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of, I would say it sounds great, but there's also a lot of fear is like AI is going to replace everyone's job. And, how do I maintain like my importance in this role? And I think it's very important to acknowledge that AI is not there to replace the human. It's never the opportunity. It shouldn't be the goal. Hiring is human. We're humans hiring other humans. We're humans hiring people that we're going to work in. We spend the majority of our life in the workplace, right? So we need to make sure that this is ultimately a human decision. AI is there to make the process, the mundane tasks, exactly as you said, much more efficient. It's there to make decisions faster or help aid faster decision making. It's there to make things consistent. It's there to make things fair. The idea is really using AI to give you stronger signals and reduce the noise. Less time screening CVs, less time, looking at how many, word searches or word matches there were, more time for conversations with the right people. There's no replacement for the human touch. There's no replacement for bringing the candidate into the office to meet the manager and see the ping pong table and, be there just in time for like happy hour. But it's impossible for you to do that with every candidate that looks good on paper. So the AI can be a great tool to help you establish out of my X amount of candidates, who are the ones that really don't just look good on paper, but actually have the skills that we need for the role. And let's invest our time there so that there's less noise, much more focused structure, and of course, done with a lot more data as well, which is always a factor.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it's important as well, because at the moment, you said at the start of this call, so many more candidates are now using AI to prepare for interviews. Everyone's got a great CV now. They're all wonderful. They're brilliant CVs now. They're like a false identification for people, right? Because I could go and find a job now. Hey, ChatGPT, just make this look perfect for the job I'm applying for, and it will generate some kind of look of that. And like you'd think hiring team now would be like, oh yeah, brilliant. But realistically, now all CVs kind of look the same because we're all using ChatGPT. There's products like giving people ideas like Teal that will go and like take away, a job spec and then give you the right kind of CV outward. So it kind of, where everyone's trying to be great, it makes everyone look the same. And I think that's a real big problem with CVs, in my opinion. But do you think we're finally going to move away from CVs and interviews as the main hiring signal, or are we just going to kind of rename them?
You've raised a very, very important and interesting topic. This is a huge conversation I'm having with my clients all the time. Is like, someone actually I was speaking to earlier this week, they said, what I'm seeing is, someone that is, a software developer, they're putting their CV into AI and they're saying, make this sound like I'm an AI focused LLM master at AI. And, in one way, yes, it's good that they're able to prompt and do that. That is, I guess, a skill in itself. But people are really masking or kind of manipulating their skills to make it seem like something they're not. So, of course, it has a knock-on effect where there's less trust on CVs. There's less trust on, okay, is this just a clever system that helped it look, good for this JD, or does this person actually have the perfect skills for the role? So I don't think there will be a moving away completely from CVs and interview, but I definitely think that we're in a bit of an awkward phase. We're moving less emphasis and less weighting on it, a bit of a reshuffling. So not necessarily losing its dominance, but definitely, losing its dominance, but definitely not disappearing. Less the main character, and more therefore sort of providing context rather than being decision drivers. They stick around because they're familiar. Everyone has them. When you joined your role, you probably started with a CV. And so people see, okay, well, I want to start looking for a new job. Let's get the CV up to scratch. So I think we're not quite there that it's going to be completely redundant. They feel objective. But what we see is clients that are completely flipping this on its head. And they're saying, okay, we don't really care about your resume at all. We're going to send out a test to, say, 1,500 candidates. It's actually a real example. They sent out a Canditech test to around 1,500 grads without even speaking to them. Within like 1 week, 85% had completed. They brought in the top 10 for video interviews, and they hired 2 junior data analysts in 2 weeks, which was an absolute record for them. So that's obviously not going to be the same for every single role, but we are seeing less weighting on the CV because we just can't trust them as much, and more emphasis on like, okay, what are the skills that they can demonstrate rather than just write about or tell us about.
Yeah, and I think like I've seen it myself, like when applying for roles like let's say post AI boom, right? I would get a job without anyone even seeing a CV because you did it off like connection. Now it's almost as if like I've been asked to send my CV in before just so they can put it through their ATS. And it's almost like getting a ticket, but that's not actually the journey. That's the train is actually the journey, and that's the interview process and it takes. But you're just holding something that you need to get onto the train. And that sounds like a weird analogy there, but it is kind of like a thing that is kind of falling away. But why is it that the interviews and CVs still dominate hiring decisions? Because even though they all know they don't predict performance, why is that, I guess, still a thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting, that train analogy. It's familiar because it's always been like that. It's been like that for a really, really long time. It feels safe. We know they're flawed, right? This has not been a conversation that's just popped up in the last year. The weighting that we can rely on the CVs has been a huge topic in TA and recruitment for years and years and years. It helps people feel like, okay, well, we made this decision because this is what we saw on the CV. So I think it gives people a good, starting point. It feels familiar. It's something that you can prove. Decisions were based on this. But I think a huge shift can happen when we have methods that we can still obtain those insights, but through evidence rather than something that's written. It's of course improved when it's people, have easy access to be able to do this. For example, skills assessments, it's more accurate, it's more practical, it's time saving as well. So I think, again, it's really just about familiarity. This is how it's always been done. It's a good sort of first starting plate. But, we have users that, up until they started working with our platform, if you wanted to be a data analyst, you had to have 2 years experience in SQL. There was no exceptions to the rule. They started working with the platform. Anyone that said that they knew SQL, they got a test. And what they found at the time was it was just after COVID, and a lot of people had gone and sort of, learn online on YouTube, how to do SQL. And people with 1 year's experience, 6 months experience were far outskilling people with 4, 5, 6 years experience. And they were able to really, start the process of more candidates, start the process of candidates that didn't necessarily look good on paper, but they were able to demonstrate that they had the skills. So of course, again, it's not just a fit for every single use case, but I think it feels familiar, but it's definitely not the most efficient or accurate way that we can doing things, especially with the new age of AI, making it so easy to really make it feel and look like you have all the skills that are necessary.
I mean, someone just put in here as well, so I think it's a really good point. People forget that after they run their resume or CV through AI, they still need to add their own flair. They still need to have that kind of differentiation, if that's a real word. I don't know if it is. It sounds right, right? But it's absolutely right that you still need to have those kind of human elements to it, your own kind of spark to it, to kind of make it different from everyone else. And to your point, and I guess like when we're talking about like skills that people have picked up and hiring signals for this year, let's say, without going too far into the future, like if you were to rank the hiring signals for 2026, what like genuinely matters most from what you've seen?
this is not going to come as a shocker, but I'm going to say skills that you have today that you can demonstrate, you can evidence. You say that you can work with Excel. Okay, show me that you can work with Excel. You say you can write code. Let's see how you can write code. So I think the skills that you have today, like, can you fill the needs of the job today? Can you come and hit the ground running? But I think very, very close to that is going to be learning agility, right? Can you solve the problems that the company is going to have or the team's going to come up with tomorrow? Things are changing really fast. And, successful companies that are growing, we need to be able to make sure that also people can, learn, pick up new things, whether it be with AI, upskilling, training, etc. What can they do for the company tomorrow? I think also, working under pressure, like different companies at different stages, the workload can look completely different, and there's no right or wrong answer. And I think it's something that comes up in conversations a lot, in terms of how long should the test be. And the question I always ask is, how long do you require, like in the team, how long do people realistically have to do this task? If you're giving someone an Excel task, for example, that it should take someone 1 hour, but you're giving them 3 hours to do it. If someone does well on it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be able to work and have like a high performance within your team if that's not the level of pressure or work pace, etc., that we need to be matching. And I think past performance signals can also be a factor, of course. I'm not saying that, put CVs in the bin, let's get rid of them completely. But if I can tell you a personal story, before I worked in recruitment, I never worked in recruitment before. Before I worked in my first SaaS sales job, I didn't know what a demo was. I'd never done it before. I'd never worked in CS until I worked in CS before. So I'm going to, die on the hill that I don't think that past performance signals necessarily should be a lead, or definitely shouldn't be a lead. But I think what they can do today, what we can do tomorrow, how can they adapt, how quickly can they do the work that would need to be done? These are all things that should be really leading the conversation in terms of hiring signals.
Absolutely. I think as more people now are coming away from, let's say you look at engineers, it's just like, I'm a back-end engineer, that's the one thing I'm going to do and plug in and play, like same with front end. But then now people are looking as the full stack people for their organizations, rather than just like this one particular thing, because it doesn't really help, because you might need help in different areas because you're continuously growing. I think that's one of the best things people can kind of look for at the moment as well. But I guess from what you've seen in these hiring teams, there's all these, you're looking at kind of these identifying signals. What do the best hiring teams do differently with data to compared to the average teams? Let's not call them bad, let's just call them average teams.
So there's a lot of things here. So I think first of all, teams that are really excelling are really taking the time to, if I can say, not just taking the JD as gospel, but really, working with the hiring managers. Okay, these are the things that we have on the paper, the JD, what's really important for you? What's a priority, right? If you have X amount of skills, 10 skills, what are the top 3 that are an absolute must have that we cannot afford to have someone that we've not pre-validated this early on? They're then using that data to lead and drive the early stages of the hiring funnels, rather than using it to back up a gut feeling. So we see this classically, home assignments, skills assessments. If you go back 10 years, they were always towards the end of the hiring process. It's like you had, the screening and the CV and then the interviews. And then it was almost like, okay, before we actually, provide an offer, let's just double check that they really can do everything that we need them to do in the role. And home assignments can be projects and things that would take the candidate a couple of days to do. And so I get it why you wouldn't want to put that early in the process, but now there's amazing tools and technology that you can validate a lot of these skills early on in the process that doesn't require the candidate to have to, spend half a day or the whole weekend doing this project. So again, they're using that data to get insights early in the funnel that helps to lead the rest of the conversation and the rest of the process. It's also about collecting data as a loop as well. Okay, once we have interview feedback, if a hiring manager or people are dropping off in a certain stage in the process, why? What are they dropping off? Is there a common theme that we can add, and we can evaluate that earlier on so we can stop and we can reduce the unnecessary interviews? So they're also using data, not just setting it and then thinking that everything is going to run the way that they want it to, but also using it to constantly tweak and optimize and make sure that we're, always building a process that's constantly, being looked at for higher, optimization. And also, we have lots of clients we work with for years and years and years. And if they choose to share, post-hire data, then we can start doing really, really sophisticated things and looking at the microdata of the candidates that not only went on to get the interview, pass the interview, get the job, but who went on to pass probation, who went on to become a leader, who got promoted. And it's really eye-opening to see that there are common themes that we can then take that back, and we can start to really sophisticated deep data things like building tests that have a super, super high niche predictability for not only candidates that get the job, but excel in the job. So there's lots of things. And again, data is here to support humans, but it's not there to replace humans. But I think when we have data, collecting data, using data, looking at the data to form the rest of the process, everything just works like much more fine-tuned, if I can say that.
Yeah, no, and I think you raise a really good point as well, is that I guess good recruiters aren't just focusing on once that placement starts or once they start on day one, because it does go past that. It goes past like their probation, what their onboarding was like, all these kind of things that people should really kind of start to lean into as well. I think that's particularly important because everyone starts off with the best intentions when it comes to hiring. Even if they think they're being fair, they can sometimes, I guess, introduce biases, and I guess unfair processes. They don't mean to, but where do you think companies accidentally kind of introduce that bias?
Yeah, I think the word accidental is really, really critical here. I don't believe anyone is like intentionally biased. I would like to think not, but it's called an unconscious bias for a reason. We don't even realize that we're doing it. I think where there's a danger where it can come to creep in accidentally is when decisions are subjective, when processes are unstructured, when there's not like a finite scorecard or criteria that we're evaluating candidates. And this can start at, the CV. Maybe it's a particular university that you went to, or you knew people in the area, or maybe it's a brand name company that they worked with and you think that's really cool, or certain titles, which we know also can massively vary depending on the company size, the stage of the company. And in an interview, of course, we have the unconscious halo effect. Like you said, maybe they support the same football team as me. Maybe they complimented, the office and something that I, decided to bring to the office. So now, I have my rose glasses on them. I think it's really interesting, actually. Our amazing director of customer success, Nick Lizzie, I'm sure a lot of you maybe heard of him. He was reading a report that said 48% of hiring decisions between evaluators on the same candidates had different outcomes. And I think that is a really shocking statistic. And I think that it feels fair on the surface when we're leaving things to, how do I feel the candidate, answered this question. But what's really fair is giving every candidate an equal playing field, same opportunity to put their best foot forward at a time that suits them, with the exact same questions being marked automatically with the exact same criteria, exact same scorecards. This is how you can really ensure that you are being as fair in process as possible, and really letting candidates demonstrate their skills and shine through merit versus any other factor.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was at an event the other day at Google, which is the Future of AI in HR event. And Alan Price, who works over at Deal, was talking about this exact kind of topic, where it was, if you asked a recruiter to review like a heavy application, like review CVs, basically, that had a heavy applicant number, if that person had to do it twice, would they pick the same people? Would they uncover like certain things? There is such a thing called human fatigue, right? And we can't be expected to like identify the exact same people every single time and make that completely fair. That's where like good tools come in, like, tools like Canditech, exactly like that. And I kind of want to delve into that a little bit more as well, and like, because I think the best products at the moment solve the really kind of niche problems, and they lean into that kind of area and that kind of space. So wouldn't be fair not to get you here to talk about a bit of Canditech as well, would it? So, realistically, what is that problem that Canditech is solving? And how does that solve the interviews and CVs that clearly weren't kind of identified first? How does that kind of work? And what problem are you solving, I guess?
Yeah, sure. So Canditech, in a nutshell, we're here to help validate skills in a holistic way through job simulations that really mimic the challenges of the role. Like I said at the start, really seeing how candidates do the job before they get the job. And of course, we also work with early careers where it's more hiring for potential. But the main focus is really having candidates demonstrate their skills rather than telling you verbally. Everyone in an interview process is going to tell you they can work as a team, but they're also great independent workers. And of course they can do this because they want to get the job, and people are good at telling stories. But
too hard, so like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I work too hard. I can't switch off from work. Like I'm just too invested. And for some people that's absolutely true. But the problem is these are like trained answers that people that, spend some time reviewing, interview best practices are going to come up and say again. So how can you tell like who has genuinely got these and who doesn't? And it's not to say that, the best teams are built with the most diverse people. If you have 100 of the same, personality type in a company, there's going to be problems. So there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer, but, we've known since the 90s that job simulations are the most valid tool, but also the most reliable tool when it comes to, predicting future job performance, because essentially it forces hiring managers to critique the candidate based on their work versus any other factor, versus then, relying on the words that they're seeing on a CV that probably was written by AI, that was probably, prompted based on the job description that I wrote. How can we evaluate work versus, like I said, verbally relying on the story that candidates are telling me. The term mishires happen, it's not just an edge case, it happens a lot. Unfortunately, what happens is a lot of people or a lot of candidates start the role and they've maybe inflated their capabilities of doing something. And this is something that doesn't come through in the interview, doesn't come through in the first month and second month. But when the tasks, pressure turns up, you see actually there's, huge skills gaps here between what we need, what we expected for the role. So essentially that's all we're trying to do, is give you those insights early on as possible. That's hard skills, soft skills, AI skills. We also got personality, cognitive, absolutely everything is checked and scored automatically. So it's very data-driven, objective. And I think that also, just to follow on the last question, is, okay, what about open text questions and video questions? So the nice thing about AI scoring for open text and video questions is you're still giving candidates that space to qualitatively tell you about things that there might not be 100% yes or no answer, but when the AI scores, and you can build 100% custom scorecards, the AI doesn't know how the candidate did in the rest of the test. They didn't say, okay, well, they did really well in the Excel exercise. They answered this question, it's okay, but because they did really well, we're going to give them a favorable answer, which is always something that can come up as a risk when human bias unfortunately does creep in, unfortunately. So this is as many highlights, there's many insights early on that are very job related in a way that's streamlined, scored automatically. Again, really letting the data drive and lead the process early on in the funnel.
Yeah, I agree. I massively agree. And I think like someone's just raised a really good point here as well. I can't actually see who. It just says LinkedIn user there. So whoever you are, love your point. You are right, but there's more to it. I think gut feeling does come down to one point, right? It's a small fraction of one of the hiring signals that you can have. Like if I go into something knowing I have more information, I feel more confident. If I go into having, let's say, for example, I needed 5 hiring signals, like to make sure that I hired someone. If I have one, I'm not going to be too sure about that hire. But if I use like an assessment process like this to then have 3 or 4 of those hiring signals, I'm going to feel so much more confident in my ability to hire that person. And I think that's where that kind of comes in, if I'm not mistaken, which is giving you more to go off, that you feel more comfortable making a better quality of hire, and making sure that you're understanding that you're putting someone good into the process, that you're not going to have that threat of them dropping out or having to pay, because it's costly to rehire, right? But it's a good point. It doesn't sound silly at all. I think gut feeling does come in at some places as well, because there's that culture perspective, there's that team, are they going to fit in well with the team as well? You do need to think about, there's always those sayings, we don't hire dicks, and you don't want to hire those kind of people, and that comes from a gut feeling. But from the skill level side of things, yes, I think you do need these kind of things. And sometimes I guess recruiters, we're a skeptical bunch, and that just comes from the work we do. And when we talk about skills assessments, there is like a kind of misconception that recruiters have. So what do you think the biggest misconception is that recruiters have about skills assessments?
Sure. I think a big misconception is this is really, really difficult to do. And I think this is, again, it goes on to like, okay, the history of job simulations or skills assessment. It feels like it's hard to implement. It's a big project. You really need to dig in deep with the hiring manager, maybe bring in an external expert, lots of time. Whereas now, for example, in the platform, Canditech, you can drop in the URL of job description. You can use our AI assessment builder. The AI assessment builder will then take the JD, scrape the information, go to our library of over 500 pre-validated sections that were built by PhD holding psychometricians, bring you a selection, say, what about these three? And it's an AI, so you could say, make it more difficult, add this, add video questions, click a button and everything is there for you. And of course, you can then go on and customize that. But that's like minutes, where something used to be like months projects into minutes. So it's really not hard to implement. If you're not doing it, it can be really easy to start doing it. And often also what we find is that a lot of companies say, well, I already have our custom test, and it's something that they send in a PDF or they're sending in an Excel. But again, brings back to AI. There's huge problems with that. How can you make sure the candidate was doing it? Did the AI do it? If I send a test out to a candidate, the candidate then has that test on their computer. They can go on Glassdoor, they can send it to a friend that they also want to join the team. So the tests that maybe were effective a while ago are definitely not up to the mark anymore. And so it doesn't mean that it has to be an either or. I have lots of clients that implement their tests into our platform. So they're checked and scored automatically. They can monitor cheating. They're branded, streamlined, integrated with ATSs. So it's not hard to start if you're not using assessments already, and it's not hard to implement or transform the assessments that you already have that are 100% fit for purpose into a way that's much more 2026 ready. And I think another huge misconception is that, I don't want to add a test because it's going to create a bad candidate experience. And again, I think when people maybe think of assessments, they think of these 3-hour projects. And of course, if you're putting that at the start of the process, you're going to have an effect on the candidate experience. But it doesn't look like that anymore. Candidates really appreciate the opportunity to demonstrate and be seen, essentially be seen. If you look at a job on LinkedIn, you see 150 applications, like, I can apply, but, am I ever really going to get seen? So this allows them to really demonstrate and put their best foot forward, usually at a very early stage of the hiring process. And actually, we just published a really, really big study. It was like over 80,000 candidate surveys that we had from the platform. We found that 89% prefer to have processes with skills assessment, and 78% said having flexibility, being able to do that in my own space, my own computer, not having to come into the office to do it, which can always be awkward because, candidates sometimes usually are in a job and then they have to, call in sick and go to the office. So being able to do these tests and demonstrate their skills in a flexible way that they can do it in their weekend or the evening was also really, really important. So, those are some big misconceptions, I think.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that kind of kills a business and kills a hiring process as well. It kills anything if you say we've always done it this way. Like when people are like, oh yeah, no, we've got a hiring process, we've used it for years. If you've used the same hiring process for years, I'm sorry, it's not up to date, it's not relevant, and it's probably not accurate for the people you're interviewing. It's one of my that'll be a trigger for me now. I could go on that all day, but I think we're talking about like getting into the topic of now of like the, I guess, skill-based hiring and what that's going to kind of look like for people. So where do you see, I guess, skill-based hiring actually changing outcomes, rather than just, we call it skill-based hiring just to tick a box or whatever?
Absolutely. So actually, I gave a webinar, I think it was like maybe a year ago, and it was like, companies really, changing to skill. Like, what's the first step? Well, it's looking at skills matrix, right? Who do I have today in the company? What skills do I have today in the company? Where are the skills I need to hire for, rather than just like names or titles or places within a team? Like what are the skills that we need to bring more into? What are the future skills that we're going to need? So I think that it starts a lot with like really looking at the business and seeing, okay, where do we have these gaps? Where do we need more of? Where can we upskill people? And we also do a lot of work with clients, of course, for external hiring, but also for internal mobility, skills gaps analysis, and so on and so forth. But I think where it can really make a massive difference is when it's used to anchor decisions and early on. Like it can help decipher who gets through the door. And for the user that mentioned, okay, it's all about, the human element. Yes, absolutely. And that's why there's no replacement to the face-to-face interview. There's no replacement to the human interview. But most teams realistically absolutely do not have time capacity to be having that human touch with every single candidate. And so it's, how do we decide how can we early on identify based on data, based on job suitability, who should be coming through to the next step and who should be getting that, time. And from there, you see, of course, the quality of the hire shoots up. But above that as well, when you have someone who has, performed an assessment, have a work sample. And that can be really great to help you, structure interviews and make sure that you're really digging into areas that need to be digged into. It's not a discovery interview. It's okay, now we know, and now we can build upon that. It's less about, hiring people like us, that have CVs like us, that had, similar hiring journeys like us, and more based on like demonstrable ability to do the job. And, on the longer term, this also affects performance, retention. People are happy, people feel motivated and happy, and they want to stay in companies that they're doing well in the job. That's just a fact. People, like I said, we spend most of our life in work. If we feel like we're constantly not doing where our managers are expecting us to, that doesn't feel so great. And we're probably going to quickly look for a job that we are going to feel like our skills are being valued. So not only does it help hire the right people into the company, but it also helps people ramp up faster, stay longer, be happy, aligned with their skills. So yeah,
we're not just hiring contractors. You want some longevity in there as well. You want to make sure people stay and actually do the job. Now, one of the things, because you work in, I guess, not just tech, like there's so many different areas and industries that you work in. I'm curious, is there like a unanimous hiring signal that people kind of pick up on now after using the structured assessments process? Is there something that just everyone's like, yeah, this is now my hiring signal?
I think in terms of like hiring signals, so there's no one size fits all, because like I said, we work with tech, but also customer facing and marketing and sales. And I think that's also part of like the historic problem is like a lot of companies will use aptitude tests, which have their time and space. We have a whole library of cognitive assessments, attention to detail, critical thinking, verbal reasoning. But what we try and do is have that there also to be used, but also like, okay, if someone's applying for a customer support role, let's give them realistic customer support inquiries or challenges, and let's see how they handle it, see how they actually, solve the problem. And, it's all about, I would say the common theme is situational judgment, which is not, there's a situational judgment for what? Situational judgment for how a marketeer is going to handle a digital marketing campaign and be able to optimize the data, but then also how they will be able to write an email to present their action items to their managers. Like, I think that it really comes in signals of trust, which relies on consistency, standardization, having something to anchor the conversations in. They can trust that the candidates have the abilities because they've seen that they've seen the work sample. They already know they can solve problems. They know they can make decisions. They know they can prompt AI. They know they can communicate, handle real life scenarios. So I really think that's the overarching sort of signal is, okay, we can identify, we can validate, we can prove that candidates can actually do these areas for the role. And that gives you a lot more trust in the candidate and a much more like structured process afterwards. So more standardization, more structure, more criteria that are the same criteria for everyone, and that's when decisions become explainable and controlled.
Do you see any moments now that you get like the non-believers who are like skeptical about using AI tools within their processes, and like, I get it, if you're not used to it, it can be something that you're a little bit wary of and you want to make sure you're doing these things. But has there been like a moment where someone's been like, okay, I get it now, like, oh, I understand now, this is why we do this?
Yeah, absolutely. It's when managers suddenly see that their calendars are empty, like in a good way, because they've gone from having dozens of interviews a week to just a few. Generally we help our clients reduce interviews by like 80% of the unnecessary interviews. So not only are they having less interviews in their diary, but the quality of those candidates coming in, everyone is a great candidate. Everyone, not just are they talking the talk, but they can also walk the walk. And we've seen that even before we've given them the opportunity to talk the talk. So the candidate quality increases, and that's like it clicks. Okay, not only did we have a reduction in volume, we also improved the quality, and we were able to spotlight hidden talent. Candidates that didn't look good on paper actually excelled in the job, and now we can see past that. We can see through that, and we can identify them, and time to hire drops like almost by accident, like usually by around 50%, and conversations are much more focused. Decisions become faster, and then it lands that like assessments aren't adding steps, they're not adding more steps to the process. They're really removing friction, they're removing ambiguity, they're removing the guesswork, and they're giving hiring managers back like their time, and also increasing the quality.
Nice, love that. Yeah, no, it makes recruiters look better as well. You're identifying like better talent quicker, more effectively. There's one of the KPIs I think is really important is manager toil. How much like time of your hiring managers are you wasting? Because are you getting them on calls religiously, like trying to like, is this CV any good? Am I speaking to this person correctly? Is this the right kind of person we should be hiring for? You should kind of alleviate all that problem. Then brilliant. Only makes you look better. But while
it's also good. Sometimes, when I speak with recruiters as well, and they say, well, the hiring manager, they get loads of candidates, but they're not passing them. And we say, okay, let's uncover that. Like, what is not coming up? And so also like can help really increase the relationship and the understanding of the roles, and in a way that's not just this is the JD. Go and do your thing, find me the good candidate, but like really breaking down, maybe there's an adjustment, maybe there's priorities, maybe there's things that are really important. Maybe someone last was brought into the team, but it was found out after a few months that they really couldn't do this. So it also builds on the relationship between hiring managers and recruiters, helps recruiters feel like more that they really get the things that are really important, not just for the role, but for this hiring manager as a team as it is today. And so that process of also like developing, okay, why is this CV good and this one isn't, but also why is this candidate passing the interview and why are they not? That can again just really help to streamline things a lot better.
Yeah, I think you raise a good point there. Like a few months down the line, we realize this person can't do the job because they've, let's say, for example, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Cheating in tests at the moment, it's through the roof. I've seen a friend of mine, John Gould, he had someone use a deep fake in an interview as well. Like these are the lengths that some things are going to, right? It's nuts. So I think it's nuts though, and maybe you have something different. So is it a real problem, or is it do you reckon it's just a few of us overblowing it, or like talking about it too much?
Well, it's a big problem. It's a really big it's a really big problem. Okay, like there's a difference between like using AI to cheat or using AI. Like if you're using AI, for example, to format your CV in a way that looks clearer because you don't really know, you want to make sure that you've not said the same thing or repeated it enough, it's not really cheating. If you're using AI to make it look like you're absolutely something that you're not, make it appear that you've got this like leading skill that just doesn't exist, that's not okay. And when it comes to assessments, 100%, this is like the number one reason why clients, especially when they have their own home assessments that they've been using for years and years, they just cannot rely on it. They can't rely on the reliability of the candidates that are doing it, and the trust is broken. Trust is just gone, right? People don't know it. A really good answer, it must be AI. And it's our dev team spent a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, a lot of development time, really building a whole suite of tools that can doesn't just measure one thing, but measures lots of things simultaneously. It's something we're constantly reviewing and working on. And there's also, like you said, like AI interviews where recruiters are coming on, or hiring managers are coming on, having an interview, and the candidate's got this like kind of awkward pause while for the AI to listen. Yeah, just listen to the answer, and then they're feeding it back. And so people have become really suspicious. They don't trust it. It is a problem. And
does Canditech pick up on that like live during the interview? So like, let's say for example it happens, or your interview or the assessment gets kind of, they're going, you just see like because if I'm mistaken, there's like a copy and paste, you can identify when that kind of comes up as well. Like, so there's do you get that live as it happens, or is it something that comes up later on, like when you're trying to process all the information?
Yeah, so we have a bunch of tools. Like first of all, blocking candidates from being able to copy any of the assessment content. That immediately is going to make it much more difficult for someone to put in another platform to retrieve the answers. We got copy paste detection, we got tab switching detection, we got IP address tracking, question randomization. A huge thing is also using follow-up video questions. Someone might be amazing to code, but if they didn't know how to solve it themselves, they're not then going to be able to answer a follow-up video question, telling what they would do if this changed or if that happened, or how they would explain to someone junior in the team. It's also about keeping tests to the time that you expect the candidate to take it, and it doesn't afford them an extra 2 hours to go and walk over and call a friend. There's lots of different things, and it happens. So it doesn't disqualify anyone. It's not saying, okay, they switched a tab, so the score is 0. We just provide our clients with all the insights. They can see how many times, where they were, where was it they navigated to, etc. But it's live for the candidate when they do it, even though we tell them the welcome page. Some candidates might just go scroll, start, and not read it. And I say that because that's probably me. So when they leave, they come back, they get a message. Then they know it's not okay. They do it again. It's really definitely intentionally trying to cheat. But really the beautiful thing is that everything's customizable. So our clients get to choose what they do and what they don't want to monitor. So it may be okay that you go over here and do that, and you can switch that on and off for on a per assessment basis as well.
There we go. Oh look, we got Paul Vidler. I had a candidate demo earlier this week. Very impressive tool. The anti-cheat tech is brilliant. I mean,
Awesome.
That for a testimonial live.
There you go. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it.
It's true though, like a couple of years ago when this boom started, like I would have loved this tool because it's so embarrassing to you feel so cringy, like going, hey, like, are you using an AI tool? That person just goes, nah. And you're like, cool, no follow-up from me. See you later. Nice. So I'm curious, I'm wary of time as well. So I want to make sure I focus on these really important last couple of questions for you. You've been doing this specifically for the past 7 or 8 years. Now, what's one of the biggest mistakes companies make when rolling out new tech? And I guess what would you recommend for them to do if they're looking at? So I don't know, let's say there's some people in TA now looking at using something like Canditech. How should they roll it out, and what should they be wary of?
It's a great question. I think what they should be wary about how they're rolling out. I think it comes down to, okay, what are the problems that we need to solve? People, it's very big, generic problem statements, time to hire, we need to increase the hire quality, etc. But what does that really look like? How many applicants are you getting? How many do you need to filter it down to? What are the most important things? So I think it's also about really understanding the problem, and that's going to look completely different for your senior hires, to your junior hires, maybe to this office, and so on and so forth. So it's really about digging into the detail and understanding, okay, where can we make the efficiencies? Where's the most time that we want to be saved? What's going to look different for the tech team versus the commercial team? And it's also about making sure that you're having that deep understanding from the manager about what's really important for the role. So I know it was kind of on the last thing we talked about. Okay, is AI cheating? We actually have in the platform an embedded ChatGPT and an embedded Google. So a lot of our clients say, actually, I need to know how someone prompts and uses ChatGPT and how they're able to work with it. And we also have a whole AI catalog with things like vibe coding exercises and data validation. So it's also about understanding from the manager, hey, what do you think about using AI? Is it okay? Because a lot of the time they'll say it's okay that they use it. I just want to see how they're using it, right? I want to make sure they're not just putting in the question and they're saying answer it. I want to make sure they're using it in a way that replicates how we use it in work. I don't know anyone that doesn't use AI in work. Do you? Everyone's using it. And so that's okay because, on the platform, they can do that. They have little transcripts. They see everything. So I think the biggest mistake is having a general problem to solve, but really breaking it down into different areas and communicating that. At Canditech, I can tell you, I've got lots of clients with lots of different use cases, different things with different teams, etc. And so the more communication, the more upfront, the more detailed we can be. Okay, for this role, that, for this area, that, for this office, that. The more that you can really work with the vendor and with the success managers in the vendor to really make sure that you are getting into all the areas rather than just general areas. So this is what we always try and do. But yeah, I would say it's about really understanding what needs to be done and also looking to the future. Okay, what about 2027? What about, what about new teams? What about new areas? How does that involve? And really building that again into a much more skills-based, matrix of understanding, okay, what do we have with the talent today? Where do we need to bring the talent in, for the problems of tomorrow, for the challenges of tomorrow.
Nice. And one of the questions I did have was like, and because we're kind of like getting to the end of the hour, end of people's lunch, and if you're still here, thank you very much. So I guess what does excite you about, like, its recruitment in the next, you mentioned it, like into 2027, next 12 to 24 months? What's something that you're like, this excites me, this is what I'm saying I'm looking forward to seeing grow and develop?
Yeah, so much. First of all, like I think what really excites me is just like the pace at which everything has changed. Like you said, like you see at the start, like a year ago it was like, oh, I'm a bit scared of AI. Like we're not too sure about it. And I was like, we've got budget for AI. Tell me about the AI, things that we can do. So it's people's willingness to change, people's willingness to, adapt. It's the new skills that are coming out. It's the vibe coders. It's the AI prompting engineers. It's, looking at really, okay, I think the workplace as we know it is kind of going to be looking very, very different in the future. And already technologies that came out, 6 months ago or a year ago are starting to look very outdated. So it's the change in tech, it's the change in like what the future of work is going to look like, what the workplace looks like, it's the skills. And it's also, I think, I think for candidates as well, it's okay, well, this is what I can do today, but if you give me, the right tools and the right opportunities, this is what I can do tomorrow. And so it really feels like with AI, you can really do anything, and AI can help to streamline things, make things more efficient. Again, less time on manual tasks that are repetitive and are really well suited for AI, more time for that human touch. On what matters, more time on having meaningful conversations, building relationships between hiring managers, recruiters, and candidates. And there's so much, but the pace of change is absolutely wild, and it's a lot less. AI is not a novelty anymore. It's definitely like the enter. It's here. It's arrived. It's yeah.
Like so many people now still saying, "Oh, are you ready for the boot?" Like, it's here, pal. Like, adopt it, or live the rest of your recruitment life like a cave person. Is the low and short of it. Mate, thank you so much for jumping on. Really appreciate you giving me an hour of your time just to pick your brains on, I guess, all the things that are kind of happening in hiring and like what Canditech's doing to support that. One of the things I will say is, if for those watching have taken some value away from this and picked up some interest in using certain tools to help them, Ellie and I will both put a link in the comments so people can check out Canditech a bit further. As I really want to thank them for their time, like taking an hour out of your day. I know you're busy. You've actually got a wedding to prepare for, haven't you?
I do. I say 5 weeks. It's actually more like 4.5 weeks. So, but yeah, no, thank you so much. It was super insightful. You're so wide and so knowledgeable, and it was really anything around conversations. The AI and recruitment is always something that I love to be involved in. So thank you so much for having me, and thanks for all the attendees.
Oh, my pleasure. And thanks for everyone that joined, and fingers crossed we'll see you again soon, mate.
See you soon.
Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Yes.